What's up, everyone, and welcome back to HBCU Game Day. I am Symone Stanley here from our Atlanta studios, the city that is the home of the 2023 SIAC Championship. Is Albany State versus Benedict this year, and here to break it all down with me, two voices that you probably heard on the TV calling games in the SIAC. We have Jamie Walker and Sylvester Williams. Guys, how y'all feeling?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I think we'll have a good game this weekend.
I am doing great, man. It's championship weekend.
Yes, it is.
So let's talk about how these teams got here. Benedict basically ran through the conference again, but Albany State came down to a, 3-4-way tiebreaker?
Yeah, I'm going to say 5 almost.
Something like 5 maybe. Even though Allen didn't really count. They had a chance, but they wouldn't have counted because they're still technically a provisional team until next year.
Okay, so let's talk about how that last week in SIAC football, last Saturday, really determined who was going to be facing Benedict.
It broke down to a few different, teams. You're talking about Tuskegee could have won out. Fort Valley had a couple of opportunities to be able to get into the mix. Benedict was already solidified. Miles, who I personally wanted to see rematch with Benedict, they won their game against Tuskegee, but they needed some things to fall. So you're talking about just really so many scenarios, and I think, and we're going to get to it later, but just the opportunity of a lifetime for all of these teams to still be in it and have meaningful football at the last week of the season.
I tell you, Albany State brought out their Michael Jackson, and they just moonwalked right on, slid right on into the championship. But like Jamie said, it came down to somebody had to win. You had to win your game. If you would have won your game, it would have made life a whole lot easier for a lot of other teams. Tuskegee, if they would have won, it would have been Tuskegee. Fort Valley, since Tuskegee lost, if they would have won, they would have been in. Gotta win. Albany State won.
Right, because I know I was talking to Jamie earlier in the day, and he was saying Tuskegee wins, they're in. So I was a little bit surprised, two teams that if they won, they in. Like you said, Fort Valley needed a little help from Tuskegee, but I was surprised when it was Albany State at the end.
Well, surprise. See, this is the great thing about football. The great thing about football, you come together as a team and you start to peak. And if you're a coach, you want your team building each week. Each week, you want them better than the last week. And I think that's what happened to Albany State. Albany State, great. This is the first year. Great. They were bad to start the year off. Albany State wasn't very good. But they came together, they got better, they got stronger, and then they started to rise. They started to rise. And you saw at the end of the year, they started whipping up on people.
You hit the nail on the head, man. When you're talking about just how the SIAC kind of shaped itself, talked about it in the preseason, how, each team was going to fall. Everyone kind of knew, Benedict was going to be the bell cow. But Albany State was actually picked preseason to fall second, which is kind of ironic because I think between them and Kentucky State had the most to transition as far as what they did, especially on offense. Kentucky State had their defensive, folks coming back. But when you bring in an offensive coach that wants to bring in his own thing, his own, set of doing things, his own culture offensively, and you have pieces where, Coach Gabe Gardenia, who's, at Charleston Southern now, was a run-first guy. If you know Quinn Gray at all in his pedigree, coming from FAMU, going to these different schools, he likes to chuck that ball around. And so them transitioning into what they are now, it was going to take some time anyway. So give kudos to Coach Gray and what they've been able to do.
Yeah, we definitely want to give Coach Gray his flowers, so we can go ahead and do that right now. Like you said, first season as head coach at Albany, and before Coach Gray got there, Albany State was obviously very competitive with Coach G at the helm. With him leaving, it was a question of could it be a transitional period, but obviously they picked up right where they left off with Coach Quinn Gray, and this is a year where we had 4 new head coaches in the SIAC, and it's one of those new head coach. Well, a couple of the other teams, Tuskegee was competitive with a new head coach as well, but Albany getting right back to the championship game with the new head coach, that says a lot about Coach Quinn Gray.
It's funny you mentioned Tuskegee. We were talking about the rise of Albany State, how Albany State got better each game. It seemed like Tuskegee went the other way. It seemed like Tuskegee kind of fell off toward the end of the season. Now when Bryson Williams got hurt a little bit during the midseason, and they just started to slowly decline. Take advantage of the situation when you have it, and that's what Albany State did.
And just the brilliance. I gotta bring this up now. The absolute brilliance of Dr. Anthony Holloman to take the divisions away from the conference. Now, we argued about this in some other, spaces, but meaningful football in the last week was great. Everyone knew kind of Benedict, was there. But the rest of these teams being able to hang around and the amount of coaches that were still in it and just, still getting their teams motivated, you are exactly right about Tuskegee. Coach Aaron James is phenomenal, but that team in switching QBs, running backs, what they did defensively, and talk about their defense, a ball-hawking defensive attack. They did kind of falter at the end. Still an exciting team, but did kind of, switch things. Now, they already had a lot of stuff in place anyway. He was the offensive coordinator last year. Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things that, everyone was in place with that squad. But the fact that many teams were up there, still in contention right there at the end, was beautiful football at the end of the year.
And I'm not going to lie, Symone, I called it wrong. I want to bow down. I want to say I am sorry. I called it wrong. I thought because, a couple of years, it's been more than a couple of years where you've had teams on one side, on one division that should have been in that championship. But I think I like the idea of the East-West. But when it comes to those Georgia teams, who do you split? How do you split those teams into the East-West? And that's what caused a lot of the problems. I think if someone could have got out off their high horse and said, hey, we're going to go to the East or we'll go to the West, we'll split these Georgia teams, you could have had that division. But, hey, that's why I don't get paid the big bucks. That's why Holloman gets paid the big bucks, to make that decision to go ahead and have just one conference. Oh, man, it worked out perfectly. I think it worked out perftly.
So y'all were debating in the spaces about the divisions?
Much debating all season.
We did.
Much debating.
He hated the fact. Well, no, he did. I'm not going to say he hated. The fact
he
that
was skeptical.
That it was a Eastern and Western division. We were all assuming, even up to last year, that, just because the SIAC was transitioning and teams were actually coming in, who would be on the East and the West. Mm-hmm. And then once it was announced that it would be divisionless, it was like, oh, okay. Well, people, want those Eastern and Western Division championships just to have in their pocket. Mm-hmm. Whereas I was like, okay, nah, because you have to play every single week in the SIAC. Mm-hmm. So two different philosophies, but it still ended up being great football.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. The only thing we do need to change, though, now that they have everything equal, the SIAC, they will play a game. Most teams play a conference game that isn't considered a conference game. Like Tuskegee played Fort Valley at the first game of the year, and those are conference rivals, but that game did not count as a conference game. Hey, looks crazy to me too. I don't know how they do it.
I'm looking at him like, huh?
I don't know how they do it. But the game did not count as a conference game. Now, I'm not sure how that works, but if somebody can get back to me, let me know how that works. I would appreciate it.
So that's to fill the void of a non-conference schedule in the beginning of the year?
I have no idea.
I think it may have just been because of the Red Tails Classic. It may have been just because of that and just to even out things. But yeah, it goes in no better. No,
it was every school. Every school did it. Because I think Allen versus Allen versus Kentucky State, that wasn't a conference game. I think every school had one of them, and I don't know how that works.
Right.
But it worked. It worked. And it could have caused problems with the tiebreaker, too.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
everyone was like, okay, what's going to happen here if we have these identical records? Mm-hmm. It was coming down to point differential and who you played and things of that nature. So if it came down to the fifth, 0.5 tiebreaker, we were going to see what was going to happen. All kinds of chaos, which I love at the end of football season.
I do. I love it.
All right, y'all. Let's get into the X's and O's of the SIAC championship game again this Saturday in Atlanta. Albany State, Benedict were the two teams that came out on top of the divisionless SIAC. So let's start with Albany State. You guys have been covering the SIAC all season long, all the changes and everything that's been going on. What do you think Albany's biggest strengths are right now?
For me, I would like to say defense. They have, even though they've struggled on offense, trying to get that offensive identity, like Jamie said, you're coming from a run team to a passing team, so you're trying to get that offensive identity. They're second in the conference behind Benedict when it comes to defense. So their defense is their strength. Benedict's their offense. They're putting up 45 a game. And anytime you got a team that's putting up 45 a game, you would think that would be your team's strength. That's not really their strength. But I do think their defense is, Albany State's defense is their strength.
Absolutely. I think when you have a defense like Albany State does, that dirty blue. That dirty blue defense, that, lost some key pieces as well from last year. Give kudos to that brain trust to keep that defense alive. Mm-hmm. They're also one of those ball hawking, opportunistic defenses as well that tackles well. When you're talking about some of the leading tacklers in the SIAC, they belong to that Albany State defense. And so when going into this game, their strength has to be defensively, because Benedict scores 40 points a game.
Right, 40
they
points.
Also give up 8 points a game.
8 points.
So they have to be opportunistic, because to get in and stay in this ball game, I think Albany State has to turn over Benedict several times to stay in it. I think it has to be their best performance of the year.
We're going to see, because Albany State hasn't played Benedict yet this season. So this game is so much more interesting, because we can't go off of, what happened the first time these two teams played. But I want to talk about Benedict's strength. I feel like 10-10-10s across the board. Army strong everywhere.
You said you could just throw a dart. Throw a dart on the board. This is Benedict's strength. They have, if you go on the defensive side of the ball, they have the best defensive line, I believe, in D2 football. Between Broughton and Denales as your two bell cows on defense, those two are great. They have a freshman, and I will shout out this freshman until the end, till he's a senior. This young man, his name is Joshua Barker. Joshua Barker was the 5A Defensive Player of the Year in the state of Georgia, and he was also the powerlifting champ in the state of Georgia. If they have him listed at 5'10". If he's 5'10", I'm 6'2", all right? He may be 5'8". But he may be one of the strongest people I've seen. He literally bench presses the offensive guard into the backfield. As a true freshman, he just dominates at that defensive tackle spot, and he doesn't even start.
Talk about depth.
He plays behind another guy, Hannibal, and he is a killer. This kid from W.J. Keenan High School in Columbia, South Carolina, a local kid. Hannibal, he is that defensive line is so strong. Albany State has not seen anything like this defensive line. One thing Benedict does, they get pressure without blitzing from that front four. Oh, my goodness.
And to sing the praises as well. Talk about J-Ron Kilpatrick playing that spur position for Benedict
Zero.
as well. If you're talking about someone who can do dual things, that is him. He can both intercept the ball and he can make tackles. Any ball carrier coming through there, he's there. He's around the ball all the time. So when you're talking about this defense, they're phenomenal. But if you switch to offense for a second, Coach Chennis Berry talked about this in the beginning of the year when you talked about in the spring game and along in the media day. He talked about losing Eric Phoenix, who was a phenomenal talent at the quarterback. Moved on. He sang his praises, but he said, we got to move on. And he did. He couldn't name a signal caller then, but when it came to the preseason, he said, Aeneas Dennis is my guy, and he has run this offense to perfection. They've changed it up a little bit in that you see a little bit more eye candy. You see a lot of motion. You see a lot of downhill running, but they've allowed him to actually run this offense. And you're talking about the three-headed attack at running back. Noah Zias Scotland was supposed to be that guy. And it's kind of similar to what happened last year in that he got injured through the middle of the season and came back towards the end. You're seeing him come back now. But DeAndre Duhart is that guy. And don't count out Jaden Taylor as well, who switched from receiver to running back. You're talking about a phenomenal running back core. and they are unafraid to run the football. But even beyond all that, Aeneas Dennis has some receivers out front that can absolutely catch the football as well. To my Caden High, the freshman coming in. If you look at the receiving core from last year, it is totally different than it is this year with younger guys. They moved some kids in transition, moved tight end. You know, you got Stephen Campbell and others that have gone on to move into different positions and have perfected this offense to where you can't just key in on the backfield, but you absolutely have to defend the perimeter of Benedict.
You got to do a lot, Albany. You got to do a lot against Benedict. Let's flip it to the other side and talk about some weaknesses. Albany State, where do you see some weak links?
I think it's the offensive line. And they're not a bad offensive line. The problem is they're just going to be going against a really, really good defensive line. And they're going to see a type of pressure and a type of force from the front four that they haven't seen, because Benedict will rotate seven to eight players. They will rotate that defensive line. And I don't think Albany State has seen that type of pressure up front. So, you know, that offensive line this week, you know, they need to go to bed early.
Hold on, your voice getting high now.
You know, they need to go to bed early, get a lot of rest, make sure they eat all their vegetables and take their vitamins this week, because they got, as my granddaddy say, they got a tough road to hoe this week.
They do. Wow. Asking me that, name weaknesses for Benedict.
Albany.
For Albany. What I will say is this. I think the transition from them being more of a downhill running attack to more of a passing attack has kind of, you know, shown itself in the transition of quarterbacks. You know, you had Deontay Banu, who's been there the last couple of years, who has ran that offense in the way they did it before to perfection as well, because he would play action pass all the time. Him being out front and having to find receivers in this passing attack, in this Quinn Gray attack, has been a little bit different. So they've switched quarterbacks and those that are able to kind of, you know, throw downfield, looking for that signal caller, even getting out of that game last week, coming out for a while and having to bring in another quarterback to be able to score. So them being able to actually score the ball is one of their weaknesses. I think in the passing game, if they become one-dimensional, it's a long day when it comes to going against this defense.
And as we've seen throughout the season, anybody going up against Benedict has been in for a long day. So no news there. Now, this is going to be a tough question for you guys. Benedict's weakness.
Well, you know, and it's strange because Chennis Berry, he's a former offensive lineman. He's a former offensive line coach, and he preaches offensive line. You check his YouTube channel. He got a bunch of offensive line videos. But the weakness on that Benedict team is their offensive line. They had to totally revamp it. You know, they lost a lot of grad seniors. So that offensive line is somewhat new. They're big. They're huge. They are huge. And they have a great coach. But if you're looking for a weak point, it is the offensive line. And I think if you have a strong defensive front that can kind of move Arenas off of his spot, out of his spot, force him to pass quick, force him to get rid of that ball, that's where you would do it. You would attack the offensive line. And I think a team as strong as Benedict, their offensive line may be the problem. That may be their only chink in the armor.
That's an excellent point, man. That's an excellent point, because that was one of the things he talked about in media days was the revamping of the offensive line. But for me, they're slow starts.
Yes.
In a lot of games, you know, even though it may be blowouts at the end, they start off really slow. And I don't know if that's on purpose or them just being methodical, but them starting off slow. And I think if they start out slow going into a championship game where Albany State has gained confidence all year going into this championship game, that can spell, you know, trouble for Benedict. Now, not saying they can't come back or not saying that they aren't capable of still winning, but if you give a team confidence and leave them in it, hey, they have all the hope in the world. So I think their slow starts could be a hindrance in this game. And if you give the quarterback confidence, whoever's playing quarterback for Albany State, and let them complete a few passes, I think that could spell trouble for Benedict.
You know, it's interesting. You talk about the slow starts, and they have been notorious for slow starts this year. Because I did the Edward Waters game. They started off. It was a close game for Edward Waters. What else did I did? Allen. They started off the game tight. Savannah State. I did the Savannah State game. It was 17-17 into the half. But all those games have one thing in common. As soon as the other team made a mistake, as soon as the opponent made a mistake, Benedict jumped on them and ran away. And that's what Benedict does. They wait on you to make one mistake. When you make that mistake, they jump on you.
Yeah, it is.
This game is going to be in Atlanta, which is about, 3 hours from Albany? Mm-hmm. About three.
Maybe a little shorter.
A little shorter.
shorter.
You know, it's going to be Saturday 1. You know, the traffic going to start hitting.
There you go.
And I would say it's about 3 hours from Benedict.
3 hours.
Yep.
Three and a half on a
Yep.
bad day, straight up 20.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think either one of these teams has a home field advantage?
Albany.
That's
Albany. And this is why I say this. I hate to cut you off, but for most people know I'm from Columbia, born and raised. Live in Atlanta now, but I'm from Columbia, born and raised. Winning is new to Benedict. That program, a 6-4, maybe 7-3, may have been the best record that program has ever had. As a history, since they restarted the program in 95 or 94, they definitely have a losing record by far. So the crowd support is something new. And shout out to Dr. Clark Artis, the president over there, and Willie Washington, the AD. They're trying to get that community, and the community is supporting them. Last week against Allen, crosstown rivals, cross the street rivals, the Battle of Taylor Street, the stadium holds about 10,000. I want to say they had about 7,000. Now you say, okay, well, that should have been a sellout. Here's the thing. It was South Carolina State's homecoming the same week. And if you're from the state of South Carolina, you're going to South Carolina State homecoming. I don't care how great Benedict is. Benedict hasn't been winning long enough for you to forsake South Carolina's homecoming. But for you to have about 7,000 people in that stadium on South Carolina State's homecoming, that is huge. It doesn't. If you're outside of Columbia, it doesn't really mean anything to you. But that's a testament to what they're doing at Benedict, growing that program. Now, I said all of that. I don't think they're going to have that huge of a crowd to leave Columbia. The alumni has done a great job, though. Yeah. They have chartered buses on the away games, and they've chartered 2 buses, the Alumni Association, for each away game. Maybe they'll set something up and bring some students here. Maybe because it's Atlanta, everybody wants to come to Atlanta. Everybody wants to see me in Atlanta, I guess, or whatever else in Atlanta. But I think Albany State will have, because they're Georgia, they already have alumni who live in the Atlanta metro area. I think there may be more fans on the Albany State side than the Benedict side.
You know what? Benedict, if you look up and down that roster, they have several kids from Georgia.
They do.
In fact, there was a piece that you all did that talked about when they filmed Inside the Locker Room. There are some kids that have a chip on their shoulder because a Georgia school didn't recruit them. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see more Georgia. I think you're going to see a better turnout than you think, even for Benedict. Okay. I think this is a phenomenal game, and I'm thinking about Lakewood Stadium in general.
Oh, great.
In how intimate the venue is, it's going to look good when everybody's in there.
I think putting that game at Lakewood was a great. Hey man, somebody might have to give Holloman a raise, man. He's had 2 good ideas, right, man.
Listen.
Hey, somebody might have to give Holloman a raise. I love the neutral site championship game. I don't like a championship game being played on somebody's home field. You know, the other team earned their way to that championship game, so you shouldn't have that built-in home field advantage. And so having the game in Atlanta, Atlanta's the Mecca. Atlanta's the Mecca.
It is the hub of college football.
There you go. And the SIAC offices are here in Atlanta, so why not have the championship here in Atlanta? It makes perfectly good sense. The stadium, Lakewood Stadium, is a great stadium to have it at because For those of you not from Atlanta, it is a Atlanta public school stadium. It's a public stadium, but they have two beautiful sides to that stadium. It is a really nice stadium.
Great parking.
Great parking.
Great parking.
If you're going to tailgate, I'm not sure what time the game is.
It's at 1 o'clock.
See, I don't like that. I want the game to be later on in the evening. I want the tailgating.
They can get the tailgate popping at 9.
Gotta get up.
Man, come on now. Come on. You know your people. Come on. Come on. Who going to come out there at 9 o'clock in the morning to tailgate?
Make some eggs. Throw some eggs on the grill.
If that game was at 4, maybe 5, so the end would be under the lights, that means you have people tailgating starting at 12 o'clock. You get a little bit of that happy juice in you, too, at the tailgate. Oh, man, I would love for it to be later on in the evening. But that stadium, that venue, it is a great venue for a game. I think Lakewood may sit 15,000. It might sit 15. It's somewhere around that. So it will be a great venue for a championship game.
Absolutely. It's going to be a good time on Saturday. I think that people are going to make it out to the tailgate because Morehouse was playing their games at Lakewood, and it was always people in the parking lot, no matter what the start time was. So when I get that footage, I'm going to tag Sly.
Tag me.
We woke up, we got outside.
Hey, well, I'm gonna go and check out a couple of people's tailgates. You know, I'm a official SIAC taste tester of the tailgate.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, that's my official title for tailgate.
I thought it was Sly the sports guy.
Well, no, that's my name, but my title is, I have many titles. I wear many hats. But tailgater test.
Taste test. Come on, get your name together now.
Hey, man.
Name, sir.
Blame public school education. Come on.
Let's talk about Benedict's playoff chances because, of course, they have their eyes on the SIAC championship, but there's also the NCAA Division II playoffs as well that comes after this. Last season, they had a first-round bye. They ended up losing the first game that they played. This year, can y'all see them going further in those playoffs?
Absolutely. I think Slide named it. Slide, said they are not accustomed to winning. And when you're talking about a team for the first time getting into the playoffs and having to get a taste of what that feels like, I think they'll do better going forward. Now, I called that game last year, and I can tell you when it came to trench play, that was the difference in the ball game. And so going into it this year, first and foremost, win or lose, I think they're still in the playoffs. But I think going into it, if they win this game, I think that will give them the momentum they need to win a playoff game within it. I've always said about the Division II playoffs, and I know, our division, our FCS brethren, have different views about it, especially on the HBCU level. But this is the ultimate kind of competition because you do face everyone, regardless. And I'm not talking monetary reasons, but I'm talking about just who you play. Regionally and then going out further. I think Benedict had, gotten a taste of that. They've been undefeated the last 2 regular seasons. And I think going into this year, if everything falls right, you've seen HBCUs get into the playoffs and have a phenomenal run. This team can be that team.
I think so. I think so. I think they can make that run. They can make that step. Because I think last year, I think they were just kind of caught in the lights. It's your first time in the playoffs. You get that first round bye. A lot of people don't know or don't understand and kind of catches off guard. Division II, you play 10 games. There's no breaks. You play straight through the season, week 1 to week 10, and then you play that championship game, and then after that championship game is the playoffs. Now, Benedict, they ran through the season. They had their nicks and bruises, and then they got that first round bye. You were off for a week. And here's the thing, they've never been off for a week. They haven't been off for a week, so it was new. So you have to kind of work your way through that. And if they win Saturday, they will probably get another first round bye because right now, the way the seedings are broken down, they are the number 1 team in the Southeast region, or I'm not sure. I think it's District 2. I'm not sure how.
I think it is Region 2.
Okay, I think
Super Region 2.
Super Region 2. So they're the number 1 team, so they're probably going to get a first round bye again. If they get a first-round bye again, now Coach Berry says, okay, I've been through it. I know how to do. I know what I need to do that first week. I know how we need to practice, how we need to prepare. I think they'll be ready.
That's exciting. Like I said, Benedict has a lot to play for on Saturday, a lot of implications going forward into the Division II playoffs. We've talked a lot about Coach Chennis Berry. You referenced his pregame speech he gave in the locker room. Y'all can check that video out on hbcugameday.com. Inside the look of that passion, like, I don't know if you saw the video slide. It was an inside look of Chennis Berry getting the team fired up. And just the way the kids looked at the coach, you could tell how much pride and admiration they have in Coach Chennis Berry.
Chennis Berry is a God-fearing man, first and foremost. And he takes that with him throughout everything he does in football and just his daily walk. Secondly, he has mantras that he lives by. And that he gives to his football team all the time. When it comes to what he does, he doesn't separate the two. And I think the belief comes in to where he holds his team accountable, but lets them do them as well. It is a great balance that a coach has, that anybody that's ever coached, whether it be rec or, the highest of the high in the Super Bowl, you have to know what that balance is and what the push and pull is when it comes to players. And also that you care about them as well and their well-being. I think he has mastered what that is for Benedict.
Hey, I listened to that pregame speech. I listened to that speech, and I was at my house when I heard it. I went downstairs. I went to my garage. I got my son. My son plays varsity football. 9th grader plays varsity football.
Where he at? Shout him out. What's
Best academy. Tough season, but he still made the varsity team. But anyway, I went and checked his shoulder pads. I wanted to see if I still fit. I wanted to see if I had one more year eligibility. When I was listening, when you listen to Coach Berry speak, he makes you think that you can run through a brick wall. That is who he is. I'm talking about a master motivator. And then something else you talked about. You talked about him being a God-fearing, a Christian man. Sometimes when you go in these locker rooms, you see the pregame, you got kids playing kids' music. You know what I'm saying? They're playing their music. And it's a lot of language that, now that I'm older, I'm like, hey, none of that cuss words.
Now that I'm older.
Yeah, now that I'm older, But they're doing what 19 through 22-year-olds would play. They're listening to that stuff. Nah, not Coach Berry. You listen to what he listens to, and no one says a word about it. No one says a word about it because they understand what he's doing. They understand his mission. They understand the type of person he is. And it kind of bleeds through to his players. And one player in particular is Denales. Denales is a all-American defensive end. The man, I don't want to call him a kid because he's a man. When you watch him play, he's a man. But the way he is as dominant as he is on the field, he's just as a humble off the field. He's a legitimately good guy, a Christian guy. You can see traits from Coach Berry kind of bleeding through to him and the way he is and the way he leads. Well, he kind of leads us more. He's a little bit more quiet than Coach Berry. But those positive things that Coach Berry does, they kind of radiate throughout his team. We were at Media Day this year, and Coach Berry said a poem. I wish I had that poem.
Yeah.
I wish I had what he said. But when he said that poem, I threw off my headset. I stood up. I thought I was in church, man. I started to clap. I'm talking about he had.
You caught the spirit.
I caught the spirit. I caught the football spirit. The Holy Ghost set to the side. It was the football spirit that came in. But that's what he does. That's how he makes you feel. He makes you feel like you can conquer the world. It's easy to see why they're undefeated. It is easy to see.
Undefeated in back-to-back seasons in the regular season. So it's been a lot of talk about Coach Chennis Berry after the success that he's had at Benedict. Like you said, that was a program that in the past wasn't used to winning, and now that's the standard. 40 burgers, 40-plus points is now the standard with Coach Chennis Berry at the helm. There's been a lot of conversations about these other programs wanting to hire Chennis Berry away. Could y'all see him leaving after this season?
Hey.
Why that chuckle?
Hey, here's the thing. We always do, me and Jamie, we call games. We call games for the conference, call games for other television networks. And one thing that we do in our weekly preparation, we have to give coaches midweek calls to kind of prepare for the games. So, I'm going to slide the question in. I'm going to slide it in. He's a pro. He's a pro. All he cares about is going 1-0.
That's it.
That's his. I'm going 1-0, and that's all he cares about. Now,
he's mastered the avoidance.
Now, Sly, I didn't ask Coach Berry was he going somewhere else. I asked you, do you think Coach Berry's going somewhere else?
Hey, I think he loves Benedict. I truly think he loves Benedict. He believes that God put him at Benedict, and he put him at Benedict for a reason. Now, did God put him at Benedict to strengthen his resume to go somewhere else? I don't know. But I do know money's green. Everybody like money.
Oh, now that Sly's coming out
Everybody like money. Everybody like money.
Hey.
And somebody's going to pay him a whole lot of money. So,
but I also got to give, we doing a whole lot of talking about Coach Berry, and rightfully so. The job that Quinn Gray has done at Albany State as well. Is nothing to shake a stick at as well. You're talking about a team that had expectations, who has been perennially winning for the last few years. He had to come in and really steer the ship, but he wanted to do it his way.
Yes.
And he had pieces. He did. But a lot of pieces within transition came and went. And I think when you talk about what they've been able to do in the beginning, being kind of iffy and off, to where they are now, getting them in the championship game, got to give kudos to Coach Gray.
Yeah, I do. And but one caveat: he's done it, but he had a little bit to work with.
Oh yeah,
he had a little bit to work with to get him there. And I know we're not talking about this, but that Coach of the Year conversation, I only put one coach there. I only put one coach there.
Berry?
No. Coach Berry's a winner. You can't go undefeated 2 years in a row. We already know you're the best guy. We already know you're the best. But what I mark is the program's improvement, what you've done to make your school better. Technically, they went undefeated last year. They're undefeated again. He didn't technically make them better.
Oh, so y'all doing the whole LeBron
he
MVP. Y'all
didn't make 'em
tired
better.
of giving somebody, even though they earned it.
I'm going with the guy across the street. I'm going with Coach Teddy Keaton at Allen University.
That is not a bad choice at all.
Allen University did not have a practice field. He's been there 5 years. They did not have a practice field when he first started. They practiced at an elementary school playground, okay? They did not have a field goal post on that elementary school playground. So the first 4 years, Allen did not attempt a field goal. Allen could only practice extra points 30 minutes before the game. He took that team, and they were 7-3 this year. They were a legit chance. They had a legit shot at winning the conference. They are the number 1 ranked offense in the conference. They're number 3 or 5 in the nation. What he has done at Allen University is short of amazing. I coached at Allen University in the early 2000s when they tried to restart their program, and then failed.
What was your title?
Then they got shut down. I was assistant coach. I was a linebackers coach.
Oh, okay.
I was a linebackers coach. I have a lot of horror stories about Allen University. I won't say them because they've made such great changes. The administration, Coach Keaton, and everything they've done at Allen University right now. So without a shadow of a doubt, what Coach Keaton has done, he is the coach of the year. But I will like to say they do not have a rivalry with Benedict, not yet. Even though they're right across the street, it's the AMEs versus the Baptists. It's not a rivalry because you got to beat somebody to become their rival.
Oh.
I'm going to tell you what.
They hadn't beat Benedict.
Give credit to Jasher Cox as well, athletic director.
Yes.
At Allen for that as well. They are coming. They are coming.
They here.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about facilities-wise and things of that nature.
Building the
They're coming.
stadium.
Right.
Yes, they are.
They're building the stadium.
They're going to have that next year, right?
They say the stadium will be built. They will have the home stands, and they will have the press box by the start of the football season. And then they'll keep updating, and they'll have the complete stadium by 2025. But they will start playing their games in 2024.
So, first of all, it's not lost on me that you didn't answer my last question about Coach Berry, and you didn't answer my last question about Coach Berry.
Oh, well,
but we will get back there. But I want to ask y'all,
I'll
since
make
you
it quick, he's gone. Eventually, I tried to be nice.
you tried to be sly,
He-
live up to your name.
The only question is not if, it's when. That's the question. This year or next year.
You know what? I'm going to say no. I think he'll be back.
Is that a hot take or a real take?
Well, I'm not going to get into my hot takiness because I think there's a couple of dominoes that fall on another level that would make me answer that question completely.
Y'all slick with it. Y'all
Well, here's the thing, though, man. It's hard to just say he's gonna go because sometimes you got to stick with the devil. You know, he understands that Dr. Clark Artist, what she's doing at Benedict, the president. She's the president of Benedict. The improvements that she's made to that school, the way she supports the football team. Coach Willie Washington, the AD. A lifelong guy at Benedict, he's seen the bad times and he's carried them over into the good times. And so when you have that type of support behind you, that counts a couple of dollars. That counts a couple of dollars rather than to go to such and such school and you might get paid more. But you don't know. You might have a new AD.
Right.
You might have a new president. Things going on. You don't know what you're dealing with. But at Benedict, he knows what he's dealing with. But eventually, somebody's going to come in there and say, hey, man, I got a whole lot of money on the table. And a whole lot of money on the table make a lot of people move.
Okay.
So it's going to happen.
I like that. I think the conversation really is coming now because Coach Buddy Pugh is leaving at South Carolina State. Chennis Berry has the opportunity to go back-to-back in the SIAC. It would seem like the perfect slide right over. But as we know, it's no perfect transition. That's the story that's perfectly written. So that's probably going to be the last thing that happens with the way, the world actually shakes things out.
And
I see these big grins. Y'all looking at each other side-eye.
Look, South Carolina State is a great place. It's a great place. If he takes a South Carolina State job, he probably won't even have to move. He probably won't have to move. I don't know what side of Columbia he stays on, but he could probably stay in the same house and his kids probably go to the same school and just drive 30 minutes every day to Orangeburg. I don't know. It seems great, but they don't have AD right now. Their AD, she just resigned. Congratulations to her. Mitchell, I think that's her name. She's actually a South
Campbell?
Oh, he's Mark.
Campbell. I'm sorry, Campbell. Why did I say Mitchell? Campbell. She's actually a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
She's a Hall of Famer at South Carolina State, but she just resigned. And Coach Buddy Pugh, he's taking over as the interim AD. Yep. So now South Carolina State's in a little bit.
Come on now.
Yeah,
a lot of it.
They got a lot of bit of stuff going on. They got a lawsuit with an old coach going on. So. Do you want to step into that?
There are a lot of questions.
It's a lot of questions.
And South Carolina State, first of all, they've made, if you know their program over the last, I would say 7 to 8 years, phenomenal comebacks in recruiting, phenomenal comebacks in just what they've been able to do. Winning that Celebration Bowl a couple of years ago, they've done well, and you can see that in recruiting. But they're also a program that likes to hire from within, people that are South Carolina State people. And so hiring from the outside, depending on what the demands of a coach may be a factor in who they get as well. So I would just say stay tuned. I don't think it's just a done deal, even though I think wherever Coach Berry goes, or if he stays at Benedict, would be an upgrade for that program. But I just don't think it's a done deal quite yet.
That's a great point because Buddy Pugh was part of the program when he took over. And then, there's people in his coaching tree that, probably want to come up. He wants to pick his own successor. So it's not just.
Yeah. Coach Pugh, Coach Pugh coached against us. I got a love-hate relationship with Coach Pugh. Coach Pugh was the at one point in time, he was the high school coach of our rival high school. And Coach Pugh put it on us. He put it on us a couple of times when he was a high school coach. But he's a South Carolina State grad, a former player. And then he was an assistant coach at University of South Carolina when he took over when Coach Jeffries retired and he took over the South Carolina State job. But you can kind of equate South Carolina State to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mm-hmm. Coach Jeffries was the coach for 15 years, I think. I don't know how long. 15 years. And Pugh was the coach for the past 20 years. So they've had two coaches in the past 35 to 40 years. They've only had two coaches. So whoever gets that job, the expectation is you're going to be here for a long time. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, Coach Pugh actually talked about that as well. And named the Pittsburgh Steelers as one of the teams they pattern themselves after in relation to who they bring in and just the culture of the school. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why I said it's not a done deal quite yet. Naturally, because of the distance to Benedict, of course those eyes are over there from Orangeburg, and knowing that they have to fill that vacancy, it would be natural. But I think you got some people vying for head coaching jobs. You got a Jonathan Saxon. You got, a Thomas Howard, which Morehouse has an opening, by the way.
And he's a Morehouse alum.
Yes,
he's
a
Morehouse alum. And Thomas Howard can coach.
Yes.
He can coach. He's the defensive coordinator at South Carolina.
I know y'all didn't like him at the beginning. I know. He's a former A&T guy as well.
A&T. He's an A&T coach.
But, Thomas Howard can coach.
And he's a young coach, too. Thomas Howard is 42, I think. I know to you, Symone.
I didn't say a word.
I saw you roll your eye. That is young. But Thomas,
we had the wide shot. I didn't say. I'm just looking, listening.
Thomas is 42. He's a young coach. He's young. He recruits Atlanta. He's from Atlanta. He recruits Atlanta. So he's a strong recruiter. Hey, I like Berry. Don't get me wrong. But Thomas, you South Carolina State people out there, you got one. You got one already there. All he have to do is change offices. So
I feel like y'all are hinting at a lot, and I hope that people are reading between the lines like I'm trying to do. But at the end of the day, we can all agree it's going to be a lot of news, a lot of changes, a lot of exciting things going on this offseason after the SIAC championship game, the playoffs wrap up. Can we agree?
Yes.
Yeah, after the championship game, the football talk just starts.
Yeah.
Right.
It starts right after the championship game with all these coaching and players and everybody moving. It just starts right after the championship game.
But we have to get to the championship game first, you guys, and that is going down this weekend. ATL, 1 p.m. It is the Benedict Tigers taking on the Albany State University Golden Rams. Make sure you guys are locked into HBCUGameDay.com and on the YouTube and on social media for all of the coverage. I am Symone Stanley. He was Sylvester Williams, taste tester fanatic. And we have Jamie Walker here as well. Thank you guys so much for rocking with us.